So, what's the real difference between a society where you're truly free and one where you're, well, not? It's more than just having a government and a few rules. Turns out there's a very specific blueprint, a design that separates liberty from tyranny. Let's break down what that blueprint actually looks like. At its heart, the whole thing boils down to this simple conflict. On one side, you've got a system where whatever one person wants, well, that's the law. Power is totally arbitrary. But on the other side, you have a system where the law itself is king. The whole point is to make the rules more powerful than any single ruler. And this brings us right to our first big idea, this fundamental battle between the power of a single ruler versus the authority of the rules. This quote, often credited to Jefferson, just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly captures the goal of the rule of law. It's about completely flipping the traditional power dynamic on its head. It's about creating a system where the government is accountable to us, the citizens, not the other way around. A huge shift from being subjects of the government to being the source of its power. So what exactly is this rule of law we keep talking about? Well, it's the core idea that a nation is governed by laws that are consistent, predictable, and this is the big one, apply to everyone. And I mean everyone. No one gets a free pass. Not the president, not the police, not the most powerful billionaire. Everybody plays by the exact same set of rules. But, just having rules isn't quite enough. The kind of rules you have is what really matters. And for those rules to mean anything, they have to be built on a much deeper foundation, the whole concept of rights. And it's pretty fascinating how this is broken down. It starts with the most basic concept of all, freedom. Now, this isn't political, not yet. It's existential. Thinkers like Sartre argued that you are fundamentally free simply because you exist. You're constantly forced to make choices, big and small. It's just an inescapable part of being human. Okay, so you have that raw personal freedom. Then we have liberty. This is what happens when your personal freedom bumps up against everyone else's in society. It's a political concept. It's the space you have to act. But it's not infinite, right? It can be, and often is, limited by law to make sure my liberty doesn't stomp all over yours. And that brings us to rights. These are the moral claims, the fundamental principles that we build our laws upon. They're often called self-evident truths, the basic things you're entitled to, which the government is supposed to protect, not grant. And you can see this idea perfectly illustrated right here. The American founders didn't say they were creating rights out of thin air. No, they argued they were just recognizing rights that already existed, rights so fundamental they're unalienable, which means no government can legitimately take them away from you. And this brings us to a really crucial distinction. There's a big difference between a de facto right, something you can physically do, and a de jure right, which is actually protected by law. So, for example, you have the physical freedom to lie, nothing's stopping you, but you have no legal right to lie under oath. See the difference? Once a freedom is officially recognized as a right, it comes with responsibilities and consequences. So if the whole point is to protect these fundamental rights, how does the rule of law actually get it done? Well, the first part of the blueprint is all about controlling the power of the government itself. I love this analogy. It's so perfect. Government is absolutely essential. It gives us structure, security, all that good stuff. But just like fire, if it grows unchecked, it becomes this terrifying destructive force. So the rule of law is designed to be the fireplace, containing that power, keeping it useful, and preventing it from burning the whole house down. So how does the blueprint do this? First, it establishes that the people are the true source of all authority. The ruler or the president is just a temporary custodian of that power, and they only serve with the consent of the governed. That's also why things like term limits are so critical. They're a built-in safety switch to stop anyone from holding on to power for too long and becoming a tyrant. And here we get to the core safety mechanism, the separation of powers. It's actually a pretty simple idea. You just split the government into 3 independent branches. The legislative branch writes the laws. The executive branch enforces them. And the judicial branch interprets them. This whole division is designed to make sure no single part of the government can ever get too powerful. Okay, so containing power is half the battle. But how do you make sure the laws that exist are actually applied fairly? That brings us to the second part of the blueprint, applying justice. This slide really gets at the promise of blind justice. The idea is that the law shouldn't care who you are, whether you're rich or poor, powerful, or just an ordinary person.
For this to work, the courts have to be independent and totally free from political pressure. And crucially, any punishment has to be clearly defined by the law itself, not just made up on the spot.
Now, this is a really critical dividing line. In a society that's truly governed by the rule of law, the government's job is to punish illegal actions, not immoral ones. It can regulate your behavior, sure, but it can't regulate your conscience or punish you just for what you believe. So, we've seen the foundation of rights and the blueprint for controlling power and applying justice. Now, let's tie it all together and look at the central promise this entire system is designed to keep. If there's one thing to take away from all of this, let it be this right here. Laws don't create our rights, they ensure them. The core philosophy is that your rights exist before any government does. The law's only job is to recognize those rights and then build a fortress around them to keep them safe. So what this system really guarantees is that our fundamental rights are treated as a given, not as some gift from the government. It's meant to ensure that no part of the government can ever weaponize the law to take those rights away. At the end of the day, it's the ultimate check against the arbitrary power and tyranny we talked about at the very beginning. And all of this leaves us with one final question. The rule of law is a remarkable blueprint, a promise of a fair society. But a promise is only as strong as the will to keep it. The system is designed to hold the powerful accountable, but ultimately, who holds the entire system accountable for keeping that promise?